Okay, so welcome to Dev Seminar 2. I'm Melissa. I wasn't here last week in person because I had COVID. I'm back now and ready to get cracking. So hopefully you guys were able to tune in last week, did a little seminar on what is debating. That should still be up on the DebSoc Facebook page and you can refer back to it throughout the semester if you want to, or just in future. There's also past year development seminars up there as well if you are interested. But today we're going to look at what is adjudicating because you can also trainee at club night instead of speaking if that is something that you're interested in developing for yourself. So debating isn't just about speaking. So I think there's a big illusion in debating that judging isn't the same as speaking, but judging and debating is just like speaking, and that you can make final rounds of tournaments, you can be competitive. It's like a specific career kind of pathway that you can take within debating. So lots of people that are very successful judges and judge the grand finals of Worlds and Australs aren't actually speakers and are just pure career judges. So it's definitely a valid pathway that we should explore and definitely look at in our development seminars. So how can you get involved as a judge? So judging or adjudicating and debating, obviously just as prestigious as speaking, but you can get involved in multiple ways. The easiest way that you can do it right here is getting involved as a trainee in club night. So you can sign up through the form that's been sent to you through your emails to trainee, and you'll be put alongside an accredited judge in New Zealand. You can also judge things like schools debating, which is a very good way to gain experience with more simple formats of debating. So Auckland Schools Debating does a lot of work, and they also help with training you to get the skills. But if you're looking to develop yourself as a more competitive judge, you can also go to trainee at full New Zealand University debating tournaments. So upcoming at Easter, we have a tournament called Joint Scroll. I talked about in my last seminar. You can trainee at that tournament. You can also trainee at Throppy and Officers Cup later in the year. And if you were looking for more international experience, you can also apply to judge at an international tournament, but that is quite competitive. So you'd want to build up your experience first. So how to judge 3v3. This is the format that our club night will take place in. So the seminar will assume that you'll be chairing a debate. If you are training at club night, you won't be chairing the debate. There'll be someone to do that for you. But it's very good to learn how to do judge as a chair so that you have an idea of the kind of formalities that exist in debating. That would be your responsibility if you were to chair a debate, and it's most likely that you would be chairing if you're doing a schools debate or something like that. So just starting with the responsibilities of a chair that are beyond what a normal judge would do. So you are in charge of introductions. So once the prep has finished and both teams come into the room, but before the debate actually starts, everyone should introduce themselves. And at university, if you're comfortable, we encourage people to share their preferred pronouns. Once everyone has had a turn to go around and share everyone their name and how they like to be referred to, usually it just goes in the order of first you would introduce yourself as the chair. If you have any panelists, so other people that are also judges in the room, they would also obviously introduce themselves. And then beyond that, you just go in order of the team. So first as speaker, second as speaker, so on and so on. And then you should also, just to be clear, read out the motion that the teams will be debating, just so everyone's clear. And hopefully at that point, if someone's prepped the wrong motion, you kind of can sort out that situation before the debate starts. Second responsibility, you would then, after everyone's introduced themselves, invite individual speakers up to debate. So beginning the debate, after you've done an introduction, read out the motions, you'd say, I invite up the first speaker to start the debate, and after that speaker has finished their speech. Between speeches, you just do the formalities of, I thank the speaker for their speech, I now invite up the first negative speaker, and so on as it goes throughout the debate, just tracking what speaker you're up to. What you would also do during that whole time is you would keep time. So while a speaker is speaking, you would start the timer and make sure that you either clap or there are some apps that you can get on the App Store. I think on Android it is called Timekeeper and then there's another iOS version that's called something similar, where you can enter the format and it will time it for you. So the bell will go ring off of your phone at 1 minute, and then again at 7 minutes if you're doing 8-minute speeches, or at 1 minute and 5 minutes if you're doing 6-minute speeches. So your responsibility is to monitor the opening and closing of POIs. So a clap at 1 minute, clap at 5 minutes if you're doing it in the club night format, and also make sure that they don't speak past 6 minutes, and continuously clapping if they do. The final responsibility, and probably the most important one, is to create a safe environment for teams. This is especially important in schools debating, when kids can go a bit rogue with arguments and not quite understand what they're saying. So, for example, if speakers are making arguments based on assumptions that attack protected attributes, like you've heard in equity briefings before, if that happens, it's your responsibility to kind of pause the debate. Just remind everyone that all arguments have to be, in good faith, and that the debate shouldn't attack people based on protected attributes, or you shouldn't form your argument based on assumptions that aren't necessarily true. Just like all debating, you have to explain why things are true. So if the debate as a whole is becoming uncomfortable, what you would do, if there's like a specific speaker that's being quite bad, you would stop their speech and remind them then. But if the entire debate is kind of collapsing and falling on really bad assumptions, what you should do is, between each speech, remind everyone in the room, okay, just a reminder that if you're arguing based on an assumption, you have to at least tell me why that assumption is true, just to make sure that the debate remains in good faith. So just a reminder here, if you do have any concerns about things that were said in a debate or are said in general at club night, please tell us about it. You can talk to Grace Bayless, our equity officer, or you can talk to the chair, who will be the judge in the room that you're in, or you can talk to anyone on the exec. I'm pretty sure that you got introduced to them last week, but I'm an exec member and I will point them out to you when they arrive shortly. Okay, so now that we've gotten over the responsibilities of the chair, so that's just the few extra add-ons that you would have to do if you were chairing a debate, but every panelist or every judge in a room has to judge the debate. So we're now going to go through how you would do that. So just a general, some advice on setting up your page. This usually works best if you are judging younger school kids, or if you have fast handwriting. The left side is letting you know and some advice on how to judge physically with writing down on paper. So what I would do is firstly set up at least one side of an A4 paper for each speaker. So for example, on one A4 piece of paper, you might fold it in half, and on one side is the first affirming speaker and the things they say in their speech, and on the other side is the first negating speaker and the things that they say in their speech. So what you want to do is, as each speaker is talking, you're recording the contributions that they're making to the debate. So just like bullet points of things that they're saying, and then perhaps you would record feedback down at the bottom or off to the side, depending on what you find works for you. The most important thing though is to dedicate a little box or dedicate a little segment where it's really clear and easy for you to find where you're going to put the score for the speaker. We'll talk more in depth about how to score speakers later, but it's important that you are leaving a space where you can physically remember to score each speaker after their speech, or giving an indicative score of what you might give them so you can compare it to other speakers later. So then on moving to the right side of the slide, you can also very easily record contributions to a debate online. So if you're typing in like a Word document, for example, what I would do is set up 2 4x4 tables on Docs or Word, and the first box or the first table is really big. So this is where you're going to write your notes and feedback for the contributions that each speaker is making. And then in the second table, it will be for filling out speaker scores. So that's the ballot. A ballot is a record of all of these scores of speakers in the debate and the totals of all the scores. Generally, piece of advice would be that the team that wins should be the team that has the highest total. Okay, so here's just a little example of online page setup. This is a screenshot from a debate that I judged at Australs in 2020. So as you can see on the left side, I have a little text box from the table of all of the speakers that spoke first affirming, the speaker that spoke first affirming, and then on the right side is the first negating speaker, and then at the bottom I have their indicative scores. In the box to the right, I also have a table that shows the ballot. So it has an indication of which speaker is which and where they spoke, and then the scores that I gave them. So moving into analyzing the debate, that's more just like a logistical how you would approach it. When you're actually weighing up things in the debate, what you should do is use your notes to keep track of what has been said. So you should hopefully keep an idea of how things stack against each other. But if you get stuck, you have your notes to go over at the end of the debate. So during the debate and at the end, you should keep asking yourself questions like these, and these will help you make the decisions about what points you're going to award to which team, and overall which team you're going to award the debate. So questions like, who was more persuasive? Was there a clash between these points? Which team responded to the other team's case? Were the responses significant enough to discredit the argument that the other team made? And what stands at the end of the debate? And of what stands, what is the most important? These kinds of questions help you to weigh teams' arguments against each other, so you can then use that to inform the decision of the debate. So in terms of weighing the debate, once you've got lots of notes and you've got lots of thoughts in your head to actually look at weighing the debate, an easy way to look at the debate as a whole, if you have little experience with debating itself, is to categorize arguments into something called points of clash. So points of clash are a way of grouping the material in the debate. It's just a way of looking at significant areas of the debate as they happened and where teams had similar arguments that were opposing each other. If you keep them as more separate issues, it's easier to weigh them against each other. So you can kind of think of it like paragraphs in essays where they have key themes on topics. So they're the body paragraphs, and how each body paragraph from the F team and neg team had different opposing ideas. So in identifying these points of clash, you're usually probably going to have between 2 to 3. It doesn't have to be 3, but that's just usually how debates happen, the number of points and the time that we're given to speak that speakers can realistically cover. So just in terms of advice, keep it simple. Don't make really complicated categorizations of arguments. It should be relatively simple, especially in terms of the kinds of motions that we'll set at club night and that you might see in schools debating. Also keep it broad. Don't make like lots and lots of very specific clashes. Make 2 to 3 quite broad areas where you can factor in teams' arguments. If you're in doubt, it's probably going to fall in a debate down to one principal issue. So a principal issue is more like a matter of morals, where teams are weighing morals against each other, and then 1 or 2 practical issues where teams are weighing like outcomes. So like, you know, how much tax dollars there are to spend against each other's outcomes. So common points of clash, this is just like a very abstract look at debating, but you'll find in debating that all debates are kind of the same when you've done a lot of debating. So some very abstract points of clash that you might come across, things like, what is the correct moral position in the debate? That's quite a common like principle clash. How will a particular stakeholder be impacted by a policy? So you might have 2 points of clash about the stakeholder impact. One might be about, in an education debate, about teachers, and another one about students. And both teams had differing outcomes for those 2 groups. Another general point of clash might be, what will a specific major impact of a policy be on society? And then also, what will the societal impact of a policy be? Okay, so then moving into deciding who won each point of clash. During the debate, you should be asking yourself, when a speaker is speaking, what has been added to arguments down the line? So say you're at a second speaker or you're at a third speaker's speech and you're listening to them, you're thinking about what they're adding to the debate, what they're contributing that is new or, you know, making things more complex and better. And then does this affect the impacting of those arguments? So what they're contributing. What does it mean for the things that have already been said in the debate? Does it change things? Does it make things more significant? So at the end of the debate, you're doing things like identifying the points, explanations, and outcomes that the teams have told you. And then even if one team was able to prove something conclusively, you're thinking about things like, was the other team's point more important? So say they're in an education debate, 2 points of clash, one's about teachers and one's about students. And even though like the negating team has proved that their point about teachers is true, even if the F team could still win because this point about students could have been more important and impacted more people. So you're thinking about, even though there are 2 points of clash in the debate, if an F team won one and lost the other, they can still win the debate because the point that they won might have been more important or impacted more people. So evaluating which team was overall more persuasive, this is probably the hardest part of judging a debate. So the hard part about judging is that you don't just give a result, you have to explain to teams why you thought that each team won. So that's why you're doing all of this analysis about points of clash and categorizing arguments, so that you can give a clear explanation to teams why you made a certain decision, and justifying it to them in a way that makes sense. So here's an example of some reasoning that you might use. So if the motion is this house would ban zoos, very fun, classic motion in debating. The point of clash that emerges in that debate might be, are animals hurt or benefited from being in zoos? So the affirmative team has told us that animals are hurt in zoos because they have small enclosures and are often made to perform tricks, while the negative team has told us that animals benefit in zoos because the enclosures are designed to replicate their natural environments. Zoos no longer make animals perform tricks and feed the animals and provide them with medical care when they're sick. So a justification why you awarded it to the negative team, why you're more persuaded by the negative team, was because they showed us that although the enclosures were small, they were similar to the natural environment, and that the animals were well looked after and got medical care that they couldn't get in the wild. So therefore, I thought negative showed a clear benefit to physical well-being. So even though F was maybe right that they have small enclosures, neg brought more significant benefits to animals, and that's why you're awarding them that specific point of clash. So I hope that kind of clarifies how you would justify it. What we're going to do later is go through how you would structure it in kind of a speech form. But if you're training at club night, you'd probably only be explaining why you justified it to the adjudicator, who will then give their own well-practiced oral adjudication to the teams in the room. So in terms of scoring speakers, initially, your main concern should just be getting the result right. So if you haven't had any experience with judging, don't worry about the scores. It's not really too important at that point to score speakers correctly. But as you grow as a judge, you should start to think about scoring your speakers, because another factor in how you would accredit as a judge in New Zealand is whether your speaker scores are accurate. So the point of having an accreditation system in New Zealand is so that we can get consistent judging across all tournaments. So you're trying to get yourself up to that consistent standard. So the range for scores in 3v3, especially at club night, is 60 to 80. So 70 would be the average score that would be awarded in a club night room. So what 70 looks like at club night should be a speaker speaking for the whole allotted time. So they speak for 6 minutes, make some relevant arguments, make some contribution to the debate, and then the rest of all speeches or all scores in the room are scaled compared to this average 70. So for example, if someone doesn't quite make it to time and they don't really contribute much to the debate, you're looking at scoring them below 70. If you don't think that their contributions are very good, probably in that very low end of towards 60. However, if you think that they spoke to time and they had really, really persuasive arguments, they had really, really good thoughts in the debate, you're probably scoring them closer to 75 or above, closer to 80. Usually in club night, not going to be giving out scores like 78, 79, 80. The average range will probably fall between maybe 65 to 75. But again, like for those extreme speeches, for those really awful speeches, closer to 60. And for those like, wow, like life-changing speeches, like I've just reevaluated my entire philosophy on life, that's probably going to get an 80. But again, if you're training, a judge in a room would explain those kinds of scores to you. For supply speeches though, just a little note here, they are also scaled on the same 60 to 80 scale, but because they're half the allotted time, they awarded half the number of points. So you're then scoring them between 1 to 40. So like you're still scoring them in the same 60 to 80 range, but once you've determined the score, you would half that score. So please don't minus 40. Don't do that. Lots of judges do by accident, and then it just ruins like consistent scoring. You're dividing the total by 2 because they get half the allotted time. I hope that makes sense. Just don't minus 40. That's the one thing I want you to take away from this. Okay, so now you have a rough idea of how to justify why you think things went a certain way in a debate. You also have a little bit of an idea how to score speakers. What you are going to work towards now is structuring an oral adjudication. So first thing you should do is using all of the skills that you learned earlier about justifying your decision, you're going to determine the winner. So it's a holistic judgment of who won each point of clash, the margin of victory in each point of clash, and the importance of each point of clash. So one team might win 2 points of clash, but the other team won 1 point. They won it by a lot, and that point of clash was really important, so they still won the debate. Looking at just those kinds of things so you can determine a winner. Okay, then determining the margin. So the margin of victory is the next most important thing over individual speaker scores. So you should be moving the speaker scores around to reflect the margin of the debate. So say you thought that the affirmative team won, the total speaker scores compared to the other team's total speaker scores, if the difference between the two is 1 to 2, you thought it was a close debate. If the difference between the two was 3 to 4, you thought it was a close debate, but it was quite clear that a certain team did win in the end. If it's 5 to 7, you think it was a very, very clear debate, a clear debate. And then if it's 8 plus, it was probably more like a stomping from like an AF team that was so good, and you just didn't see like any way for the neg team to win. You might see that in certain club night rooms, but probably not, because we do actually, when you sign up to speak, put in your ability for debating. So we're not really going to have any mismatch of speaker abilities. You're probably looking at margins of more like 1 to 4 in most debates. So scoring the speakers, what you would do then is make sure that you give the correct winner and correct margin. So the total should reflect how you saw the debate, and then also try to score accurately based on what you saw. So in terms of structuring an OA, these few things, so the winner you would announce to the teams, but the margin and scoring you would only reveal to the other people on your panel, rather than showing this to the speakers. Some tournaments are open ballot, but generally you wouldn't show the ballot to the speakers unless it was like the end of the tournament when it gets uploaded online. You'll come across that kind of thing when you go to real tournaments, but generally we won't release ballots or release speaker scores for like round robin tournament like club nights. So when you're delivering the adjudication, in the beginning, or if you're just a new trainee starting out at club nights, you would just be giving your little speech to the other judges in the room. You wouldn't be giving it to the teams. That's the responsibility of the chair. So even if you're on a panel in a normal tournament, it's always going to be the responsibility of the chair to give the oral adjudication to the teams in the room, unless, just a little note, if you're on a panel and you get rolled as a chair. So for example, 4 people on your panel thought it went one way, but you as the chair thought it went the other way, someone else in the majority would give the oral adjudication. But generally, most of the time, club nights just going to be straightforward, chair giving the OA. So here's how you would look at structuring it. Firstly, just a general, like, I think the teams for the debate was very interesting. I thought it was like relatively close. You would give 1 to 2 points of general feedback. I would announce the result immediately. So it's optional to announce the result like at the start of your oral adjudication more in schools debating if you're wanting them to focus on the feedback rather than the result. But generally in uni debating, strong emphasis on you thank the teams for the debate, announce the result, and then launch into why you saw the debate that way. Any feedback would go at the end. So after you've done those first few things, then you would start to talk through how you saw the debate. So it will probably look like going first saying what you thought the points of clash were, so what you thought the main areas of the debate happened to be, then work through those one at a time, and then weigh those areas of arguments against each other. So say you get to the end of one point of clash, X team said this, Y team said this in response. Here's why I thought that X team's point still stood, and therefore why they won that area of the argument. And then at the end of your justification for why you saw the debate a certain way, you would invite teams up for general feedback, and give each individual speaker, some advice on things that they can work on, or some advice on things that you thought they could have said that would have made them more persuasive and made you potentially award the debate the other way. I would advise here, try and reduce the pieces of feedback to maybe 1 or 2 things to work on, especially if you're judging schools debating, because it can be like quite overwhelming if a judge gives you like 10 things to work on. You can't really improve 10 things at a time. It's easier if you kind of target one thing and then go from there. So after you have delivered the adjudication, when you're giving feedback, you want to offer a lot of the time when you're giving feedback about a team's case, so like the arguments that they made in the debate, you would give that feedback to the entire team, because you would assume that the entire team came up with that together in prep. So even though the first speaker is delivering the case, you would assume that the entire team had some part in putting it together. So you would want to give everyone in that team feedback on the arguments that they made, like the topics or the kinds of mechanisms that they used. But you would also want to give them individually some feedback, so more like strategic things or more structural things about their individual speech that you thought that they could have improved. So some common feedback that you might give is overwhelmingly, it would always be about structure or signposting. So speakers should follow the structure of a speech and signposting. So they should do things like when they're moving between points, say, I am now going to do X thing. So it's really clear to the judge what you're doing now and when you've finished talking about something. So it's just the same as you would do in a normal essay, like here are my 3 arguments in an introduction. 1, 2, 3. It's very important in debating that you do that kind of thing, because when you're talking really fast, it's clearer for the adjudicator to get everything in there written down, so that it's clearer to them when they're making the decision. Another common piece of feedback would be about rebuttal. So explaining why a lot of school kids in particular will just refute things. So a response that they might give is, well, that's not true. Telling them they need to explain why it isn't true, or weigh points against each other as more efficient forms of rebuttal. Another very, very common piece of feedback would be things like, have more explanation. You told me this happens. Why does it happen? Or why is it important that that happens? The kinds of things that I touched on in the last seminar when you would structure your speeches, giving more detail in each little part of your speech. Also explaining what the outcomes are, why they mattered. Or sometimes speakers can, while the team's case might have the right focus, some speakers can get confused and misinterpret the debate and start talking about actors that didn't really matter in the entirety of the debate. So advising them that maybe before their speech they should have a little bit of a think about who the most important people in the debate are, so they focus the majority of their speech on those important group, that important group of people. So just some final tips. I would just say that at the end of the day, debating is just a vibe check. So all you're doing is vibe checking both teams and saying, okay, I think that this team is probably going to be the team that is mostly correct. But then you're going to have to justify why you do or don't get good vibes from this team. I think that kind of that doesn't really. There's a really fun typo in there, but don't overcomplicate it until you're ready. So while you're starting out in debating and you're starting out to start learning to trainee and start learning to judge, don't overcomplicate it and like throw yourself right into the OA immediately and those kinds of like more complicated structural things. Literally just think about it as a more like just a simple question. Who do you think won? Like, who do you think won a certain point? Because if you start walking yourself through those kinds of thought processes, as you build through it and you see more debates happen and you listen to more judges give their justifications, then it'll be easier for you to do your own oral adjudications. So as I also said before, judging is definitely something that gets much easier with practice. So if you want to practice, we have the avenue at club night. I would also encourage you, it's just also a very good learning experience if you want to learn to speak as well, that watching old debates, because lots and lots of them have been recorded, especially in the online era, you can look and watch them online and ask yourself those questions while the debate is happening on your screen. So for this format, so the format that club night takes place in, I recommend watching Throppy or joint scroll debates. You can find them on the University of Auckland Facebook page. If you go into the videos tab, there should be lots of them up there from tournaments that we've run, and we've live streamed the finals, or we've live streamed like really high quality rooms up on there. You can also find lots of debates from other universities and other people elsewhere. So you can look at Australs 2020 on YouTube. I think Australs 2021, which was just over this last New Year's period, will also be online, so you can watch those debates. So very helpful to look at those. And again, if you are like getting quite overwhelmed with because if you're looking at these high quality debates from Australs, they're going to be saying like lots and lots of things in a short amount of time. Just if you're getting overwhelmed from those, you can find schools debates up on YouTube as well. So I will now open the floor for questions. Obviously, we have a few people in the room with us right now, but I'll also be checking for those online the Facebook live stream. Cool. So any questions in person, people? Josh, any questions? Excellent. I hope that means that I answered so many questions from the content of the video. No questions from the live stream so far. And I can also check the chat in the Zoom. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to send them Facebook live stream, the Zoom, or in person. Otherwise, we will take a little bit of a break before club night. So everyone, I'd encourage you to sign up to trainee or to speak, so you can see an OA for yourself and see debating happen in real life or virtually if you're participating virtually. Otherwise, I will see you in a little bit, but I will stay up here for a little while longer.